You know, if a song's good, a song's good. Shouldn't really matter at the end of the day how many streams it has. I love seeing people succeed. I really want to help people, even if it's just getting one little sync for them. He was Prince's sync guy. Like, he just jumps on the phone with Prince, man. It was really exciting for me to know that I was going to be working with music that I truly felt passionate about and like could get behind. Some people just send you an email saying, I need songs. You're like, well, okay. Do you have any idea of what kind of songs?
Hey, welcome to Progression, Success in the Music Industry. I'm your host, Travis Ferentz, and this is episode number 90. Today is all about the ins and outs of sync licensing. I sat down with co-owner of the Holler Music Group, Ben Morris, who has about 2 decades of experience in the sync world. We covered his career working for both a major label as well as an independent, why he decided to start his own company, what a typical sync licensing agreement looks like, why artists should be open to doing custom music for brands or agents, how a sync can change the trajectory of your career, and the importance of building your brand off your own values. But first, frequency bias. Is it holding your music career back? And how can you overcome it? And for you audio nerds out there, no, I'm not talking about EQ frequencies or analog tape alignment. So what exactly is frequency bias? Frequency bias is a cognitive bias referring to the tendency to notice something more often after noticing it for the first time, leading you to believe that it has an increased frequency of occurrence. It's also referred to as frequency illusion. Think you test drive a car and then it seems like it becomes the only car that you see on the road. That is frequency bias. So where does this play into your music career? First off, it can hold you back from growth and stunt creativity and innovation. If you found early success or positive results in a particular genre or with certain techniques, then you're going to be more likely to identify more opportunities in those same spaces. Think about it like you've got one tool that does one job. So you spend all your time looking for that job, as opposed to building a whole toolbox that you can use to do basically any job. This episode is mainly about sync licensing, so let's use that as an example. Maybe you found that you excel at doing the whole cover of a well-known song with a minor key flip thing that used to be super popular in trailers a few years ago. You keep noticing it in trailers, you keep doing it over and over again, maybe finding some success with it, which even furthers your belief that that's the only way to get a trailer spot. But eventually, that trend is going to wear out and you're going to be left with a catalog of the same thing. And you'll have missed opportunities to improve by ignoring other music requests. You may have even stunted the growth of your network because you continually worked with the same people that are looking for the same things. The second way that frequency bias affects your music career is that it can shape your perception of it. It does this in a few ways. First, it can lead to a skewed self-assessment of how you're doing. You might overvalue your familiar achievements and undervalue unique opportunities or areas for growth, thus distorting your view of progress and making it harder to pinpoint where you need to improve. Next, it could narrow your focus of what success is. You could start defining success on a limited set of criteria that's determined by what you or your immediate peers have already experienced. This happens all the time in the music industry, especially with social media putting people's success on display for all of us to compare ourselves to. And lastly, frequency bias can reinforce your existing beliefs about your career and the industry. This is something I've talked about on the podcast before. As you encounter more examples that support your current viewpoint, you become less open to alternative perspectives or possibilities. This can create a self-reinforcing cycle that prevents you from challenging your own assumptions and recognizing changes in the industry. So now that we know how frequency bias can hold us back, how do we overcome it? Well, it's easier said than done. Start by being aware of it. Be conscious of your potential preconceptions, be open to new ideas and experiences, and actively expand your network. Make sure you collaborate in styles outside your norm and embrace innovation in the industry. If you're actively trying to stay outside your comfort zone and always trying to push yourself, then frequency bias is not going to be a problem for you. Today's guest is Ben Morris, co-owner of the Holler Music Group, a sync-focused music publisher and label that has been making waves in the industry recently. Ben has over 15 years of experience in sync licensing, having previously worked for labels like EMI and Domino. He's secured high-profile placements for all kinds of artists, from up-and-coming indie acts to established superstars. He's a champion for independent music, and he's always got the best music recommendations. So welcome to the show, Ben Morris. What's up, man?
Thank you. It's nice to be here, dude.
Yeah, it's so good to see your face. We haven't talked in a little bit, man. It's awesome.
I know. It's been too long, man. I'm glad we get to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, from working the desk at Capitol Studios to, you know, owning co-owner of a label and publishing company is pretty epic. I love it. I love it.
It's funny, man. I brought up how we met with a friend yesterday. They were like, "Oh, how did you get to know Travis?" And I was just like, "What's funny? It's like my first gig in music was sitting at Capitol at this desk, and then Travis was, a runner, trying to be an engineer and a producer, and we kind of like started at the same time. It was really cool, actually. And it feels
Yeah,
like a long time ago now, man.
you took my job and also got me promoted all at the same time, because at the time there wasn't enough studio work, so I was like answering the phone for 3 days a week. Me and another guy were splitting the phones, and then we would do studio days on the other days. And then you came in and did, all of Paula's admin stuff
Lots of phones.
and booted us down to the studio. So like I was super thankful to stop picking up the
Yeah, man.
phone.
I look back at that time. I really enjoyed that like year I was in the studio. Like I knew nothing about recorded music when I came into into that gig. So like meeting
Yeah.
you and the other guys that worked down in the studio was really honestly like it's really dope. And I look back on it really fondly and like still honestly like still speak to people like yourself and people that have come out of those gigs. It's cool.
It was a fun time. It was a really fun time. Just yeah, it was a good. You only worked there for a year?
Dude, that gig was like a year almost to the day, yeah. I,
Oh,
I
that's
think I answered
crazy.
so many phones. I got to the point where I was like, I need to not answer the phone anymore. And then I went upstairs and answered the phones for a little bit
Yeah, but you went up into the tower. You went into like the music
longer.
business part of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Capitol Records building, but that building's closed now.
No? Really?
Yes, yeah, the studios are closed. The
Wait, the
label,
studio
well,
itself is closed.
yeah, so the building needs earthquake retrofit, and so they had to empty it out for like potentially 2 years. So they moved all the
Whoa.
label people to another building, and the studio people they're
Oh, I recall actually people telling me that they moved the label people. I didn't realize the studios itself had just closed down. It's kind of
yeah,
worrying
they
thinking
like
about those echo chambers that you guys used to like go down into. That sounds pretty
we
gnarly
love
thinking back.
those echo chambers. Yes. You haven't lived until you've crawled down that ladder under the parking lot and gone into the just damp echo chamber just for no apparent reason, really, just then to go down there. But
Pretty wild knowing that there could have been an earthquake at any time and it could have like just fallen in.
I think you'd be safe in the echo chambers. I don't know if anybody would ever get you out,
So
but
you'd be
they're
safe
pretty
until you died in
just
there.
poured concrete. You just live down there. Anyway, so we have to do a podcast too. I know.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, before we go. So I know that I want to do a little bit about your backstory before we get into, what you're
Okay.
doing now. I know you're not a musician, but you're like an avid, crazy music lover. Like, where did you find your love of music? How'd you end up trying to get a job at Capitol?
Damn, that's a good question. My love of music. I think I mean, I wouldn't say it came from any place in particular. I think it was just I grew up I grew up like, around their parents, listening and hearing what they play and whatnot, hating a lot of what they played. Um, Also, like my mum has questionable taste in music, and does with my dad. But like, listen to a lot of Motown and soul and like the good stuff. This is the different.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then I kind of found my own way a little bit when I was, God, shit, like 10 or 11, and really started listening to hip hop and Brit pop, and I would make tapes. My mum wouldn't let me buy any CDs that had the parental advisory, or not CDs even, there was still tapes around that time, like that had the parental advisory thing on it. She's like, no, that has cursing in it, it's bad for you. And I was like, okay.
that
So
sounds like my mom.
I get my, I get my cousin to just rip them onto tape, and I just listen to them anyway. Yeah, I listened to a lot of everything, like Brit pop, hip hop, anything that was just, I don't know, man. I don't really have I always had a love for music and film. Any sort of media, I feel like, and always gravitated towards music heavily. And then just became a collector, and not a collector in such that, actually I still have all my CDs. It's a lie, but like, um, um, yeah, I just started collecting, and the more and more I did it, I ended up with a lot of music and just immersing myself into that world. Spent a lot of money. Before I moved to the States, I was buying hip hop CDs on eBay that you couldn't get in the UK and things like that. I was spending a lot of money on music, and I think that's just where
That's
it came
awesome.
from. Just grew my love over time. Never studied music. Just do regret not like learning the guitar or the piano at an early age, just so I had more knowledge of, the way music was made. And, but there's still time for me to do that. Maybe when I actually can stop working for 5 minutes. But yeah, so I became just a fan, went to live shows, grew up in a place where music was very prominent, Brighton in the UK. It had a great music scene and was exposed to a lot of cool shit. And then moved to the States and didn't work in music in the UK, sorry. And then I worked for a bank and then moved to the States.
Very similar.
Yeah, man. It was awful. It was awful. I hated every minute of it. But like, I was lucky when I moved to the States to be able to like, focus and be like, what do I really want to do here? Like, I have an opportunity to kind of, start a career. And my ex-wife just encouraged me to pursue music. She's like, you love music. This is what you talk about it every day. You make playlists, you make mixtapes, you do all this stuff. Like, you should just go pursue it. So I ended up just applying for a gig at Capitol. Like, she knew someone in the A&R department at the time, and like, just I applied for the gig like the normal way, and then she just gave her a nudge, and I got an interview, and that's how I ended up at Capitol.
That's awesome.
I had one little. I didn't do any other music gigs before that, but I did that. I don't know if you know who I worked with before for like a month.
I do.
It's so random. Not many people know it. I don't bring it up very often.
But now you're gonna have to bring it up.
Yeah, now I'm gonna have to bring it up. But like, I got my ex-wife's company, or like a booking company, and they got word that Seal was looking for a personal assistant. Yeah, as in Kiss from a Rose. Like,
yeah.
So like, there's me, like 24, 25-year-old Ben, like living in LA, never been like, it was very wild. Drove up to this house in like Bel Air, did an interview with him, and like we got on really well. Like, we just kicked it. He burned me a Pretenders CD, and like I worked for him for like a month. So I just did like, general personal assistant stuff, and but like it didn't pan out mainly because of visa stuff. But it was cool. But that was a good thing to put on my resume. It was one of the reasons I think that I ended up getting like an interview at Capitol. But I still don't talk about it very much. It's kind of weird. I still forget they actually happened.
He burnt you a Pretenders CD. That's kind of funny.
It was cool, man. He was like, listen to Brass in Pocket. I mean, I already knew what Brass in Pocket, but the way he broke it down and like sat with me, I was like, damn, this is really cool. I always look back at that. Amazing. I wonder, I must have that CD somewhere.
Yeah, that's
I'll find it.
Awesome. So okay, so you were working at Capitol Studios, kind of just like foot in the door in the music industry. Then you went upstairs to the label. Remind me, you went straight into the sync department?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you remember when we were I was down in the studios? It was right around the time that Guitar Hero and like Rock Band were getting really big.
That was a huge moneymaker for everybody. Yeah.
yeah. But there was a guy up in the sync team that was relaying, or like was the coordinator between the label of all the stuff that they were trying to get onto Guitar Hero that was based on Capitol, EMI and Virgin and whatnot. And they were liaising with the studio, the mastering guys, right, to get the stems created from all the old tapes, which is a pretty cool process in itself.
Yeah,
And I got to know the guy Jake, who was who worked up in the sync team. And then it was literally like after about a year of being down in the studios and us having a bit of a back and forth, he was like, "Dude, there's a gig going upstairs. You should apply for it." And that was how I applied for it, and that was where I went for it.
That's amazing. Wait, Jake Vulgarides?
Yeah.
It's I went to school with him. That's funny.
Man, it's crazy. I saw him a couple of weeks ago. He's still floating around in the sync side. He's on supervision now.
He did the podcast early on, and we talked about it. And he had just taken a new job, and we decided that it was probably not a good thing to put out. So, but. Because he started to become, figure out like what the rules of engagement were when you're working for a corporation, and he was like, I don't think we should do this, and I was like, well, shit, this was a really great conversation. So maybe one day when he gets fired, we'll drop that.
Yeah, man, we should do one together. We'll do it from both sides. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
I love that. He's a good guy.
Oh, I wanted to jump back just for 1 second and describe that Guitar Hero process to people that are listening. There was like, the studios at the time were recreating stems from things that didn't exist. So like, something like the Pretenders track or et cetera, that was just a multi-track the studio guys were recreating the mix, then printing stems that could be used in the game. So it was a pretty crazy process.
I still don't understand how they managed to do it. Like, not because I don't know how it works. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
how you can take something that's like analog, like tapes, and change it and make a multi-track out of it in that sense. It still blows my mind that they did it. It's pretty cool.
they're doing that same stuff with the whole Atmos thing. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Like
Yeah,
there's guys and girls that have to take like an old Bob Dylan record and turn it into Atmos, but they have to recreate the mix. It's not like these days where, stems are printed and it's like really easy to make it sound like the song. They're going to recreate time stuff and people are like comping vocals and stuff. It's crazy. Anyway,
that's wild.
we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about sync licensing, right?
Yes.
So what was it like to step into that world? Like, obviously, you probably had a little bit of a learning curve, but then a lot of music going to picture. A lot of that is also just feel and emotion. I think of like what works. So, what was that early process like when you were kind of figuring that business out?
I think I mean going into that gig I was kind of unsure about effectively what it really was at the time. I knew what music supervision was, and was always interested in music supervision, and didn't really know the other side of it existed at the labels. I didn't know these teams existed where you took all the music from, all these records and all these artists and put them out there and to encourage people. I didn't really know the ins and outs of sync licensing until I went up there and honestly just got involved in it.
Yeah,
Honestly, it was a great team to be part of. I couldn't have I probably couldn't have asked for a better like stepping stone into the sync world. Like my boss at the time, Joe Rangel, he was running the creative side of the team, and there was I can't even remember. There was probably like 6 or 7 of us underneath him. It wasn't like a small team. There was a bunch of people pitching all different
yeah,
medias, and I came in at the coordinator level, and there was a few coordinators, and I handled a lot of marketing, so I got to know like the catalog itself, like by building newsletters and um, getting used to the repertoire, putting things out, and making sure people had like files and things like that. It was a really, really good time for sync as well. It was like right when like Grey's Anatomy was at its peak and a lot
yeah.
of music was being used, very lucrative. Like Vampire Diaries was on everyone's. We worked some really cool records as well, like LCD, Coldplay, Gorillaz, like Katy Perry, like these big, big records that you saw a lot of success from, and it was really cool to be part of.
Yeah.
And that wasn't until they sold themselves.
Well, since you mentioned it, I kind of had a question I was going to drop later about that, like, we'll call it the like Grey's Anatomy heyday of sync.
Hmm.
Or I feel like sync was launching a lot of artists at the time. Like a couple
Yeah.
of people that come to mind who are a little bit later, like Ex Ambassadors with that Jeep ad, or Bishop Briggs had a big ad and she kind of like blew up out of nowhere. Is it still is that still a thing, or is landing a sync these days more revolved around also having an established brand? Like, do TV shows want to see that you have followers and shit like that, or is it still like, hey, we want to find an artist and blow them up?
I think it is a there's still a bit of both, to be honest, man. I think
Yeah,
there's it all depends on the budget, I would say. If it's a TV show, it depends on like the budget of what they're looking for. Commercials is different as well. If there's some brands like, it's easy to bring them up, but Apple, they like breaking new bands. They like being on the cusp of new music and what's cool and like putting stuff out there. But I'd say like from an advertising point of view, there's still that a lot of what that gets licensed in advertising is still a lot of catalog, and it still has to, like they want recognizable brands associated with it. Um,
yeah,
like I wouldn't say there's a particular. I wouldn't say it's like. I'd say it's probably not as easy as an independent artist probably to get a sync in nowadays, mainly because it's just so saturated. Not because people aren't
yeah.
willing to use it, but because it is just there is so many people looking to get sync now, and it's such a massive market.
Is it as saturated because people know that it's so good for your career?
Yeah,
Like
I
word
think
got
that's
out?
exactly it. It's pretty lucrative. You can make money by, just having someone use your song and put it out there, and you're effectively getting paid to have your music marketed, which is extremely unique. Like usually, like
That's
back in the
true.
day, you would be looking for reviews or radio play. Um, and Sync was aligned with that, but not to the extent it was now. Um, but yeah, I think there's a balance. Like some people really champion like up and coming artists in their TV shows, and their budget probably leans towards that way as well. But like, um, yeah, I think it's different to back in like probably around the late 2000s when sync was really on everyone's like radar, and like budgets were
Yeah.
big. Budgets were big, and like I wouldn't say they're like some of these shows still have big budgets, but like the streaming world has changed that dynamic a lot as well. Like it's stretched it out,
Yeah,
meaning
that's
that
true.
there's more work to go around for a lot of supervisors, which is great. But this also means that their budgets are more restricted. But that means that it kind of helps when you're representing independent artists and you can be more flexible with fees, and because that's where they come to us, and
Yeah,
it's ever changing, man.
totally. I just feel like that like mid 2000s. I just feel like everybody was on like Grey's Anatomy, and then they were always playing Hotel Cafe. I just feel like there was this like singer
Yeah.
songwriter scene in like Los Angeles where everybody was just on TV and then playing everywhere in town. But
Yeah, man. You
um,
like think about like the snow patrols and stuff like that. It was just like one of those things.
yeah,
It was just like, and it was also like I think the music is itself, like it was a different type of music that was being used. If you compare the music to today that's being used on TV to back then, it's completely different, man. It just obviously
yeah.
like changes over time what people are gravitating towards.
Do you, would hard tangent here. Do you feel like what is working on television and film is generally a couple years behind what is popular on Spotify playlists? I feel like that's how I feel it is, but maybe not.
Maybe a little bit. I think it just takes time. And maybe that's because like a lot of, we're going back to what you said, like they're looking for people with a brand, and like some people like brands and TV shows want to see people with streams, want to see artists that, have good Spotify numbers. That definitely plays
Yeah.
into it in a certain um certain scenarios. I wouldn't say all of them. Like, if a song's good, a song's good. Shouldn't really matter at the end of the day how many streams it has. Um,
True. Yeah.
but yeah, definitely plays a factor into it. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I think just by going back to how there's so much music out there now, so much music compared to that time that using a song from like, I think TikTok's a really good example. Like you see songs from like 8 years ago become popular on TikTok now. They weren't popular
Yeah.
back in 8 years ago, but like it's
Yeah.
given them a new life. And I think people have, they see this window within sync now. Instead of wanting the new music all the time, they're okay with it being 2 or 3 years because that is kind of new. Because there is so much music, you might not have heard it. You might not have heard a
Yeah.
track from 2 years ago that's like perfect for sync. And I think,
Well, I think there's also like a little bit of I don't want to say vetting, but it's like the longer music's out there, there's like an emotion that's attached to a song, and
Mhm.
if that emotion is what you need at the end of your scene or whatever, it makes sense that you would drop that in. It's why, like you were saying, car companies and stuff love to get their, Rolling Stones ad or,
Oh yeah,
or whatever it is, right?
yeah,
So,
man, they want to hear the Black
um,
Keys.
exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So before I got a bunch of other questions, but I just want to tag a little bit more of how you got to where you are. You left
Mhm.
Capital at some point and you went to Domino. I think you moved to New York.
Yeah, I moved back to New
We tried to
York.
stop you, but you left us.
LA, I love my time in LA, but I realized I was an East Coast boy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wanted to be being from the UK. I wanted to be closer to home.
yeah,
Not that I go back all the time, but like it's just nice to be that a little bit closer. And I'm
yeah,
a city. I'm really like the city. It's like I mean it's home now, but yeah. So yeah, I moved back, and but right around that time was when EMI. You were around that time, I think, still around the EMI world when they were put up for sale,
yeah,
and the sync thing was really strange, man. Like we ended up the sync team from the label got merged with the sync team from the publishing company, which I think from EMI Publishing. So,
right.
which was a really strange thing to happen if you look at it outside now, because they're two different entities. Like it's not as if they had a lot of crossover. They use completely different
Yeah,
systems. You could have, but just because it was called EMI, it might as well have been called like it could have been just called Progressions Publishing. Like it didn't matter at that time, but it was really strange.
yeah,
They were trying to create value by putting the teams together and ultimately, push the work from what the label was doing onto the publishing staff and let go of the label. But like, um, so we all knew we were going to be. I knew the writing was on the wall with our roles eventually, which was when you're young and you're starting up. It was a bit of a tough thing to swallow, but I think it was a great opportunity for me, and I don't think I would have left had it not been like, we'll just that just happened. But right around that time when they were up for sale, it was Domino, UK-based independent label, were looking for someone to come work in their sync licensing team in North America. And I went crazy. I love that record label so much. I knew a load of their music already, so I just went crazy when I applied for it. I hit up every single person that I knew, and I was like, "Can you email them and put in a good word for me because I really just want an interview." And I think I got an interview just by pestering them, to be honest. like, uh, but yeah, so I did that, and yeah, I got that gig after a couple of weeks of interviewing, or maybe a month or so, and that was at the start of 2000. Oh, it was the end of 2011. Yeah, um, which was yeah, it was amazing. I was stoked. Like, I remember just being like, "Do you want the gig?" And I was like, "Yes." And I don't even think I'd asked how much it paid. I was just like, "Yes." And they're like, "Cool, you make 20 grand a year." And I was like, "What?" Like, they were joking, obviously, but like, I was like, "Oh wow." I was just excited, man. I was like, I'm like going back to like my love of music, and like it was really exciting for me to know that I was going to be working with music that I truly felt passionate about and like could get behind. And like, not to say I didn't feel like that about stuff at EMI, but there was stuff that I didn't. You don't major label stuff that you're not as excited about, and that's not where my taste
Yeah.
lies. I think
Yeah.
that's okay. But
So
yeah,
you got to work bands that you were fans of.
yeah, man, yeah, it was
That's
awesome. It
awesome.
was really
That's
cool,
awesome.
and I still
Yeah.
do. But like, um, yeah. So that was 2011, and then yeah, I was there for 10 years. So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
we grew out from it was myself and my counterpart handling the licensing side. I was strictly creative, so I was just handling everything from marketing to pitching to, doing meetings, doing coffees, traveling, like, showcases, whatever we could do to, elevate our roster and our artists and our writers.
Now, when you say strictly creative, you're talking about like not having to do the paperwork.
Yes,
Is that what you
basically.
mean?
I
Okay.
didn't have to like, I knew the I knew the value of like what our copyrights were worth and like what I was pitching for and like making sure they felt into the right budgets. But once I got something on the hook, I would pass it off onto my counterpart Sago, and he would take over in the negotiation side of it, which is what he's amazing at, or still is, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of nice for me in that sense as well because I do lean more creative, and to I know people that have to do both. I mean, I have to do both now, but so like having that balance of being able to be creative and also negotiate is tough because it is a lot of time goes into going back and forth emailing like terms and licenses and making sure people have the littlest things.
Yeah.
So having like given the freedom to be able to just strictly be like, yeah, this is what I'm good at. I'm good at selling. I'm good at like, getting people enthused about what I'm excited about. And I was given um, a pretty long leash in order to do that. And I have a lot of respect for the people that did that for me. It was cool.
That's awesome.
It was a great way for me to, just get used to what I wanted to do and really find my footing in the industry.
That's cool.
Hmm.
That was a big growth period, I guess, for you trying to
Yeah.
figure out what works for you and what works for everybody that you're working with and
Yeah.
kind of start doing your own thing almost.
Yeah, it was. And I became, you become like Ben from Domino. Like I still get, "Oh, you're Ben from Domino." Like when I meet up at South by this year, I haven't worked for Domino for 2 years. They're like, "I know you." And I'm like, "Yeah, I used to work at Domino." Like, "Oh yeah, Ben from Domino." And I was like, oh, "Shit, man, I got to change that."
You're like Ben from Holler.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's how it will be that. But, there's worse things to be associated with.
Yeah. Well, it goes to show, how much you got done and how much responsibility you had that people can say that.
Yeah, no, it
There's
was. And like I
a
said,
lot of people that work for labels that nobody remembers.
yeah, I agree,
So
man. And I was given a platform and like had a lot of support around me in order to be able to go do that and like build out a team and like, um, make it successful. It was cool. It was really cool to be part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So that came to an end at some point, and let's just do let's do the quick version of how you got to Holler and talk about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so left Domino in 2021, at this time 2 years ago actually, yeah. And then honestly was took a bit of a break, like from just a month. I say a break, sounds like I was gone for a year, but no. um, I
It's
just
like taking
signed
a nap.
I just signed a lease on a new place in Brooklyn. So I took that time just to honestly move apartments and just take a bit of time off music. I felt right after I started Domino, I had the kids. I have kids obviously, but like you know that, but not everyone who's listening does. But like, so I started Domino in the September, and then I had the girls in November. So there was only like 2 months at Domino where I was like child free. Um, so I hadn't really had a break for 10 years. No proper like full on vacation. Like, it was
Yeah.
so it really was got to the point when I was like, I stopped. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna put my feet up for a minute and just kind of I stepped away from music a little bit. I stopped listening to music for a minute and just took a breather and kind
Yeah.
of tried to work out what I wanted to do. Like I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back in house at somewhere. Um, but I'd always entertained the idea of doing something for myself. Like even
Yeah.
when I was sitting at that desk at Domino, like yeah, I sat there and thought, it'd be cool to own my own pitch company. I can do this. Like I know music, but like having the courage to actually do it was another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, long story short, I have a colleague who works at another third party called Visions from the Roof. This guy Grant, and we're friends, and he does exactly the same thing I do, but he works out of LA. And we were going back and forth a little bit, and he was like, "Hey, would you like to just come in, slide in with us and do your thing?" And they didn't have as much presence on the East Coast, so it kind of made sense for me to come in and help them build out their ad side a little bit. And I helped sign some stuff like to the roster, like some cool labels and some cool acts. Uh, yeah, and then kind of cut my teeth in the freelance world with those guys.
Cool.
Did that for a bit, and then reconnected going back to EMI with my old boss from EMI, Joe Rangel, who when I left EMI to go to Domino, he left EMI to go start his own third party licensing company and pitch like publishing company, which ultimately got bought out by Pulse Music Group.
Mm.
And he was there for a while. We kind of came full circle after honestly like 10 years. We've stayed in contact through that time, obviously, but like he hit me up and was like, "Hey, heard you doing your own thing. I'm starting to do my own thing again. Like let's have a chat." And that was kind of it, man. Like he's done it all. Like
That's awesome.
yeah, he's an inspirational dude. Like he's built our company and sold them, and he's elevated artists. He's broken some of the biggest eyes. He was Prince's sync guy. Like he just jumps on the phone with Prince, man. Like yeah. I mean, I'm not really doing him justice in my description of him, but he's like I'm not like
Well, you
a
said
mate.
Prince's sync guy. I mean, that's a big one.
Yeah, yeah. Handling
That's a
his,
mic drop.
yeah, man. Like just done a lot of good things, and like bands like Run the Jewels, where we go back to like people that did really well in sync, and people were looking for like brand and stuff. Like they did really well in sync, and Joe was part of that movement. So like he came in and said, "I'm doing this. I'm going to start a new company. How would you feel about being part of it?" And that was where Hauler came from. And
Sick.
it was a tough decision, to be honest, to like move on from working with the guys at Visions because I was really enjoying that work. And there's always the unknown as well. Where you're looking at shit. I've got to start. This was really starting from like the bottom. Like Visions had like a roster that I could work with, but this was starting with nothing basically.
It's
But
kind of exciting though.
yeah, that was also a lot of the
You
draw.
get to paint the canvas, you know?
Exactly, and it being mine and having ownership, and um, yeah, it was a really cool opportunity. So we did that. That was honestly we're coming up on almost a year. It'll be almost a year, I think,
Nice.
next couple of months.
Congrats.
Yeah, man, it's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I love it.
me
I
too.
love it. Okay, so I have to ask you some questions. I was thinking about it and I was like, okay, the show's on YouTube now. I should like make some clickbait shit up. So, if you're watching right now, this is a great time to hit the subscribe button. But I have some questions that I think are are legitimately, I think they're solid questions, but I'm just going to throw a couple things at you. This
Okay.
is kind of like for artists that are trying to get syncs, for artists that want to know what sync licensing is, just like some of this stuff, right? Okay, so we've talked about your story. We've thrown the word sync out a million times. For an artist that's super new to this world, what does a sync deal usually look like? Are there terms and points that they're gonna see? Is there like, expected dollar values or not, or what? Or like
Um,
what kind of
uh,
things are, you know?
it really depends on the company that you're going to be working with and the people you're working with. But from a sync like representational like model, it comes from commission. That's where like we make money. So
Mm,
if someone signs their publishing rights to their music or their master rights over to Hauler just for sync representation, we just go out there we go to bat for those people. That's as simple as it is. And um, we try and increase the value of their copyrights by doing that. But
mm,
like it depends. Like if you go sign into a label, you go sign to a publishing company, they're going to have in-house sync teams 9 times out of 10 that work in those places. Um, so if you're going to go in-house, you're going to be part of a bigger roster. Whereas if you're an
right.
independent artist, you're coming to a company like Hauler or the like. They're usually the rosters are a little bit smaller, a little bit more focused. Um, you're not competing necessarily with a lot of people that are already on the other roster, which is cool to have that focus and like that as an independent artist for have someone actually like really going to bat for you, which is what I like to do.
Yeah.
But like from a monetary point of view, it's hard to predict. Like if you've got great music, I believe it will end up getting synced. I think I
Right.
don't doesn't it could happen in the first 6 months of signing a deal. It could happen in 2 years down the line. And like we talk about like TikTok and things like that, where songs don't resonate in the public eye until someone just puts it on a random TikTok after 7 years, and then all of a sudden they're big again and they're off on tour. Same can happen
Yeah.
with sync, but like
Yeah.
from a basic deal, like if you get a license um, for a TV show or anything, the wherever we license music, we just take a commission off that, like a nominal fee, and it's just across the board for each song. So when you sign a deal with us, we take a percentage and then the rest goes to the artist. That's basically it. So unless we're putting in the work, we're not making money either. So it's in our interest
Right.
to get your music out there, to pitch it, to make sure people are aware of it, like to actually work. Like, because I can't pay my rent if we don't work.
That's right.
It's legitimately
Well, do
how
you
it works.
think if somebody's, I guess one question that would be a yes or no answer is, like, if I have a publishing deal, can I still look for third party licensing for?
From the I mean, your publisher might be well, publisher if the publisher has a sync team, probably no.
Okay,
Like going
they're
back
not
to
going to
actually,
want that.
no, going back to when I worked at Domino, we never had anyone like pitching really in line with anything that we published or had on
Okay.
the record side. That said, if you have a publishing deal with a company and your masters are open, that third party could pick up the masters. So you could still have two
Mm.
companies working for you if your masters are open. And vice
What
versa, if you have a
happens?
label deal and you don't have a publishing deal, those people can pick up on the other side. That's kind of how we operate. I don't
Right.
actually, best friend, people that you've worked with, they're a good example. Like we're representing them from both sides because they weren't signed to a label and they didn't have a publishing deal. Recently signed to a label. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
common knowledge where I'm allowed to say it out
it
loud, but
is.
anyway.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. But so they called me and they're like, dude, it's a bummer we can't work together anymore. And I was like, yeah, your publishing's open. I was like, we can still pitch on that side. And they were like stoked. And I was like, yeah, cool. I'd love to still get to work with you. So you still can
That's
work in
awesome.
that capacity. And there's other ways around it. Some people, like, even if people do have label deals and publishing deals, like sometimes people negotiate deals outside of that, but that'll come from the artist side. As long as like, um, those people are on board with it could work. But it's
Yeah.
sometimes it's a bit of like too many cooks could be a problem.
Totally. Yeah. Do you ever run into a problem where like you're repping the master and you have a deal that's basically done and the publishing people are kind of they're not into it?
I think
I mean, that's got to happen.
the only times you'll get that those sorts of issues would be with the majors, where they have a higher ceiling for what they expect from fees.
Gotcha.
So if we're representing the master for an independent artist that's signed to, a big publisher, and the budget for this TV show is minimal, and we pitch it, the so the deal can be scuppered by a publisher coming in and be like, no, we need more from this. But that's up to us, honestly, and to know. We we
What's
go,
gonna fly?
yeah. Well, when you're pitching, you should be know what works for what budgets and whatnot. So I wouldn't pitch anything that's problematic to anything that, in those scenarios. But it does happen. Like sometimes you just
Yeah.
suddenly work out that you've pitched a song, you didn't even know there was a publisher on it because you haven't been told. Like it's you'd be surprised.
Musicians have never
been
been the best at sorting their business out. No offense. No
That's
offense.
another episode.
Yeah, it's a whole other episode for that. Is there hard change?
Okay.
And I don't even know if this is an answerable question. Is there anything that makes an artist or a song more syncable?
Good question. I wouldn't say. I mean, I think everyone kind of knows that. I don't know, man. That's a really good question. I wouldn't say there is something that makes anything. It just depends on what you're using it for. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
I mean, it's obvious. Like, you don't hear certain genres of music that often in a film or TV or in commercials. It's not often you hear death metal or like real
right.
screamo stuff, unless it's actually like in one of those stereotypical like scenes where you'd expect to hear like you're in a
Like you're in the
basement.
club. Yeah,
Yes, yeah, or you're in a basement and someone's like doing horrible things to people or something, and there's like always going to be like that kind of vibe to it. But yeah, I think one of the things I wrote down with this is that like I said earlier, I do think that any music can work for sync. There's always a place for everything, whether it be like an
yeah,
ambient piece or even a death metal song. I've worked with a really big metal catalog when I worked at Domino. We got syncs for that catalog because they would come to us and be like, "Oh, we need metal," and there is when they need it, they'll come to you. So there is
yeah,
opportunities there. It's just not as fly. It's not like typical singer-songwriter, pop that they usually exists in the TV world, or upbeat kind of fun electro stuff that you hear on commercials. That it's just all dependent on what you're pitching for, to be honest.
yeah. What's the process like? Okay, for people that aren't listening, there's a thing called a brief that's kind of like breaking down what a spot is looking for. What's your process when like a brief comes across your desk and you're thinking about your artists? What's your move?
Like, how do we pitch it, do you mean? Like, how do we go from
Yeah,
there? It's what the brief will come in, and 9 times out of 10, there'll be references within that brief, and they'll give you a breakdown of what they're actually looking for genre-wise. Um, there is the complete opposite of that, where some people just send you an email saying, "I need songs." And you're like, "Well, okay. Do you have any idea of what kind of songs?" Like, I just need new stuff.
wow,
And I was like, if I send you some of the new stuff that I have, I know you're going to raise your eyebrows. But like, yeah, they'll give you they'll give you as much information as they can, in order to get where they want to go, whether it be from an
yeah,
advertising client or a TV director or producer, or, trailers as well, like like the brand is looking for or what the film is looking for. And it's our job to just go through the catalog. Sometimes when you go through your catalog, you can't fulfill every brief. Like, you
Well, here's a
don't,
question
yeah.
regarding that because I've always heard that it's better to respond with, "Sorry, I don't have anything that fits," than send something that's a miss because a
Yes.
lot of music soups and directors get pissed, right?
Yeah, man, you're just wasting someone's time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I totally agree with that. And always think, like, actually, something that Joe, my business partner, taught me back in the day was always less is more as well. Like, if you've got like
Yeah.
three songs that really knock it out the park, send them. If you have if you have another seven that may hit the nut, hit it a little bit, but aren't, quite there, hold back. Because like you said, like, these people are getting inundated with music all the time. When you're sending pictures,
Yeah, slammed
Like,
with music.
can you imagine if like a lot of people will ask you to limit how many tracks you send? So they'll be like, hey, can you just send your 10 favorites? Which is still a lot. If you're going out to,
Yeah.
I don't even know how many people they're going out to all the time, but there's got to be like at least 50, at least. So if you're
Right?
getting,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, 500 songs back, you're going to listen to, you can't listen to every single one of them. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, big believer in just sending what you feel confident in and maybe not overdoing it. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's the trouble, the problems that you can get into when you're working for a bigger corporation. You have priorities to push. So like there's singles, there's new artists, there's things you want to break, there's things that need to be pitched. You have to meet numbers. Like there's a lot of pressure on you to get that stuff out there. So that can affect your pitching and your mentality towards pitching.
Yeah.
I think it's tough. It
Yeah.
is tough in that position, man.
Okay, well, I guess kind of like that slightly similar question. Do you ever have like if you're repping a catalog, do you find that like directors or music soups, somebody might reach out to you and say, "Hey, we really want something by so and so artist." Do you ever get that? Do they come to you for an artist, or is that rare?
I mean, I actually like from a maybe not like for something that they're going to license something that's already existed, because if they want to license a song that already exists, um, or they can do that. Sometimes they'll be like, "Hey, does this artist have anything new that they're working on that hasn't been shared or is out there? Could you send that to me? I'm really interested in licensing something from them." Or they go down the custom
Ah,
route where they get them. They're like, "Hey, we'd really like to work with this artist. Is there an opportunity here where we can get something made together, and like make something for this film or TV show, or can they do a demo for a commercial?" Like, is
that's
yeah,
okay. That's cool. That's
yeah.
cool. Is that I would imagine those things are probably the highest budget, rarest situations, like ending title to a movie,
You'd be
big
surprised.
brand deals. No?
Nah, you'd
Okay,
be
okay.
surprised. I mean, I
Yeah,
think, yeah, if someone really feels like they wanna do something with an artist, and yeah, it's not always gonna be like they might be coming to like a place like Hauler or a Domino or a Secretly to come for an independent artist because their budget might be more
mm,
what's the word? Like lower. It might just be like not being able to reach the highs of paying for the Rolling Stones and like the Black Keys of like what we talked about earlier. Like they'll come and have this mid tier where they'll be like, okay, you know what, there's some really good writers here, there's some really good artists. Let's dig into that. And that's become
yeah,
more prominent as well, like especially around the advertising world where music houses are coming to independent writers and producers and artists in order to demo. Instead of going to
mm,
straight up regular composers, they'd be like, how can we engage the independent music community? And they'll
that's
come to
cool.
them and be like, hey, will this artist do a demo for us for this commercial? You get a small demo fee for doing it, but like, and it may not stick, but it's a really good process for these artists to go through. And it's also, it's a little bit of an ego boost for them to see that these people respect what they're doing and already have them on their radar and, trust
Yeah,
them enough to actually go to bat for them. And I think it's pretty cool. Like, it's hard, like, like we go back to like any sort of branding, they do want like a big popular song attached to it as much as possible. They want it to be huge, recognizable if they can, but their budgets don't always work that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I did a lot of those like demo type things when I was working for a specific producer a few years ago, and he loved to get his artist spots, and so a lot of demo work. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's tough, man. And some people find it more difficult than others. And, you know,
yeah,
especially artists who, have a unique sound. They find it and, work on their own in very very isolated way. And
yeah.
some of them don't take notes very well. Some of them don't like,
Most of them.
it's tough. And I've always encouraged people from that point of view to be like, you know what, put the artist thing aside here. They're asking for your artist project, but you could do it under a different name. You could say, this is, Joe Blogs. I'm gonna do this for like these sorts of background kind of routine, like, money. They make money at the end of the day. It's like I
Yeah.
always call it like, just like it's like busy work, man. It's like admin for them. It's cool.
Well, it's still making music though, but I think it would
Exactly,
be a
yeah.
fun exercise for a lot of people because it's also an exercise in like kind of being accepting of taking notes. Like
Hmm.
you're trying to make your art, but you're also not in control of it.
Yeah.
So it's like that's quite a thing for people
putting your
to.
ego aside is tough for some people. Like in that sense,
Yeah,
like being able to, I
yeah,
would find it difficult as well. Like I think it's tough, and
yeah,
but also being able to, take what people are giving you in a brief, maybe on a phone call or in an email, and putting it into a song is not easy. Like it's pretty,
no,
like they can give you some sort of references to go by, but it's tough, man. I think I have a lot of respect for people that do it, but I always encourage people to do it as well. I'm like, you know what? Even if it doesn't go through, even if you aren't successful and it doesn't hit, it's it's a great thing to do. It's a great way to experience like writing, cutting the picture, and like demo and
or
taking notes.
building
And
relationships
yep,
too.
exactly,
It's like,
exactly.
so and so's done like 10 demos for us. Let's just keep going back until
And
you
they
nail
will,
one, and
and
then
they'll come back, and
you
they
get your
will.
trailer and get your trailer check, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, man. Yeah, then you can just quit music.
uh, you mentioned like brands and stuff like reaching out to the music community. What do you think about like, producers that are making tracks or beats or music all day long, working with top line writers? Is there a place for like the instrumentalist style music producer to have a sync licensing rep?
I mean, sure. I mean, I think instrumental music's always going to be tough in that sense. Like, the beats, the like beat playlists and stuff like that that became very popular during COVID.
Yeah,
Um, that type of music, whilst it's great and has its place, it's very tough to put out there, and it's very tough to
yeah,
license, mainly because there is so much of it, and you're
yeah,
competing against some of the best as well. Um, that said, like, these producers could, they attach a top line or attach someone else to it, and like it changes the project, it changes the dynamic of what you're making.
yeah,
I think like we work with a few people in that scenario, and they do they do that part on the side, like the beat or the instrumental stuff on the side, and that's one of their artistic side. But on the other side, they're working in house with other people doing co-writes, and you know,
right.
um, like stretching that muscle instead. I think as a
Yeah.
producer, it's good to be, have a few eggs in different baskets in that sense.
I agree with that diversification.
Yeah, man.
All right, I got one last question, which kind of is tied to that a little bit. I think maybe you may have hinted at it without saying it, but can we talk about music libraries for a second? Because I feel like there are so many quality music libraries. There is so much content. Like, my wife is watching with Netflix, Love Is Blind or something, right? There's music like top to bottom in the back of that show. Obviously, all some kind of blanket license. The fact that there's all of this content being made and all of this music library stuff, does it make licensing artists harder? Or is it still very clear when you want to go to Ben and when you want to go to extreme music?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's just different worlds, I would say. There are different, like reality TV. I think, like the way you're talking about Love Is Blind, something like that. Anything on
Exactly.
Bravo, nine times out of ten, they're using music library like cuts, and because they don't have music budgets and they don't see the
Yeah.
value in having recorded music within those in those shows, and it makes a lot of sense. I get it because there's a lot of dialogue, there's a lot of talking going on, there's a lot of like, um, yeah, but like that's usually like in those worlds. That's I think there's you can make a lot of money from having a music library. You could, it's the same way
Yeah.
that sync exists, and you can make a lot of money having a great music library and having someone produce really cool tracks and putting them out there. You can make a decent amount of money, but like it is tough, man. It is like a very people have deals like with networks, and they're all put onto shows for a length amount of time, or um, brands do it. Like a lot of online content um, is like you see like tutorials on YouTube. It's cheaper for those
Yep.
brands to license a piece of music from a music library rather than have to jump through hoops to get approvals from uh, four different publishers in order to license one song that probably wouldn't turn
Ye-
the needle. Does that make sense? Like,
right.
is it really
Yeah.
elevating their brand? Is it like not to diminish the music that they're using, but or dismiss it? Sorry, but like, it's just a different world. It's a,
Yeah.
it's a, it's hard to explain.
No,
Like,
totally.
yeah,
I'm with you. I think I phrased the question wrong. I guess I feel like over the last few years, the quality of music libraries has gone up. Have
Yep.
you noticed that spots that potentially would go to independent artists are now going to libraries because it's cheaper and you can find a great piano ballad? Or that just doesn't happen?
I wouldn't say it happens that often, but like it was,
Okay.
I wouldn't say they're competing. If if you're going to a library, you already know you're going to get like what you're looking for. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like,
Yeah, totally.
and it's usually because you have a blanket deal with that library, and it's what the budgets of those actual shows. It all comes down to budgets at the end of the day. Like whatever, it all comes down to money.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
yeah,
always true.
yeah.
Always true. Dude, okay. All right. So obviously we could hang out all day, but I gotta ask you the last three questions and
Okay.
then I will let you go back to work. One of them is a new one this season, and it's basically a music recommendation. Is there any artists you just love that you think people should be listening to more?
Okay, right
Got
now.
to be a short list, man. It's got to be short because
Well,
I
I
put links
literally
in.
only put one because I'm. You know what I was gonna do for you because I'm that nice. I was gonna make a little playlist of like stuff
Ooh,
that for you to share after this of just stuff that I've been listening to lately. I'll be honest, I
perfect.
DJ on the side and I DJ a lot of random shit. Like I don't ever stick to like one genre of music or like one era. Like I've been DJing a lot of funk and soul and disco and world music lately, and
Nice. That's cool.
but like one person that I've been really digging into lately is Eddie Chacon,
Okay.
who you probably know as one half of Charles and Eddie from back in the day. Had
Oh
them
yeah, yeah, yeah.
had the massive hit. Would I lie to you? So Eddie recorded an album 2020 with guy called John Carroll Kirby, producer who works,
Oh,
yeah, who works with like
he's a
Frank Ocean.
badass.
Yeah, man,
Badass player.
amazing taste. Like, so they kind of like this guy hasn't worked in music for I think 25 years. Hadn't made any music. Rediscovered, like I think I don't know. I forget how they became back to like how they became friends and how they got together. But they got
Yeah,
together and recorded this honestly impeccable album in 2020. It's so good. Um, it's just
that's cool. I'm
perfectly
gonna check that
produced.
out.
It's gorgeous, man. I think you'll like it as a producer anyway. But like, it's just so cool. And he's got another record coming out. I think Friday actually. It's kind of weird.
That's
The end of March. But like, yeah, I think it's awesome. Like as someone he's like in his, I think he's 59 and he's rediscovering his career after being like leaving music or from the pop side and then
yeah.
going off to be like a photographer and a creative director for an agency and stuff like that. And then coming back into music and now having a career and being signed to a label like Stone Throw for his next record is really cool. Um, but it given me kind of like as someone who's, just dipped into their 40s and has started a new company and like you're always like shit, am I getting too old to do this? Like
Huh.
it's very
No, you're
inspirational to see
good.
this guy who's 60 put out this amazingly like youthful, like very cool record.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd highly recommend that.
Amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
definitely gonna check that out. And we got shout out to John Carroll Kirby. The dude is a badass.
Yeah,
A
yeah, he's
badass
worked with
player.
some of the best people, man.
Yeah. All right. Amazing. So last two questions. Was there a time in your career that you chose to redefine what success meant to you?
You know what? I sat with this question for a minute. um, I think honestly, I think starting Hauler was was probably that moment for me. Like it's only been a year, but like going back to like being Ben from Domino, like I wanna, like you said, I don't want to just be Ben from Domino. I want to be Ben from Hauler. I want to be Ben Morris who has his own taste and his own identity in
Yeah.
that sense. And I want very much want Hauler to be an extension of my taste and my identity in music and what I stand for. And that's what I'm trying to do. Um, So for me to just have my recognition from my peers and um, you know, be successful in the sense like make money and be able to pay my rent and I'm not trying to make billions. I just want to, be able to, it'd be nice to make billions. But like yeah, I think it's really easy to look at like as success as something as financial. And I think just being happy and being content in what you do and working with the people you want to do, and that company and my company being, um, you know, built off my values, that's success for me. Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
think in a sense, I'm already feel successful to be able to start my own company. Like I wouldn't be in this position. I wouldn't be able to do this if I wasn't somewhat successful already. And I have massive imposter syndrome. So like because I still like, I'm at the moment where I'm like, can I do this? I'm like, am I allowed to do this or should I be doing this? Am I just wasting my time? Like it is. I do sit and think that, but like, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
I
man.
don't know if it does.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to highlight something you said in there. You said, I'm gonna change it to apply to more people, but building your career based on your own values, I think, is something that a lot of people just unfortunately never make it to. They build a
It's
career
tough.
based on somebody else's values of what is like what's important to other people, and then they never actually kind of get to be their own thing, and it's unfortunate. So I think that was really good.
Yeah, man. And like I understand the need for like this like, when I sign stuff to Paula, like I I sign it because I like it most of the time.
Yeah,
Like, and obviously see a value in sync licensing and publishing. But I love seeing people succeed. I really want to help people, like, even if it's just getting one little sync for them, like for something, like it makes a difference. It changes people's lives and it can,
yeah,
turn the needle on a lot of things. And I really get pleasure out of doing that. Um, so yeah, like I want to continue to do that. And yeah,
that's awesome. No, that's I mean,
yeah,
yeah, just the smallest sync to an independent artist can just be the beginning of the ball rolling down the hill,
it
and
really
you just
does.
never know
It
what's
can
going to
be, man.
happen. You never know what's going to happen. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
And the last question before we go is, what is your current biggest goal that you can share with us, of course? And what is the next smallest step you're going to take towards it?
I think that honestly sounds very basic. I don't own a house. I'd love to own a house. Like, I never thought that I'd move to America at 24 and work in have a music career into my 40s. Like, um, and I think it took me a minute to really, honestly, kind of establish what goals I've wanted. And like, I have kids and I've done that part and they're amazing and they're cool. But yeah, I just want to have an easy life at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I really want to have something to pass on to them as well. Like that's a huge like goal for me is like build a business where, whether they love music already. I don't know whether they want to get involved in what I'm doing, but it would be really cool to be able to do that. So like, having ownership over certain things like my own property and my company and to be able to pass that on to my kids is important for me.
That's amazing. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Dude, this has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, man. I could have talked for another
I
hour.
know. Well, you can't hang up yet because I'm gonna have Maggie bring Scotty out here so you can meet her. Yes.
Nice. That's awesome. Hell yeah.
Even though we're still in the podcast right now, but we'll leave that in. Please share with
You can
people.
just edit that into that's the clickbait, dude.
Exactly. Share with people where they can find you, where they can find Holler if you're accepting music or what or.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll happily share I don't know if I'll happily share our like email from where people could submit their music. For submission to be represented from a sync point of view, or even down the line for publishing. But like, my door is open in that sense. If I'll be transparent with people and say if I think it works and if it doesn't. But like, I would say go to our website, but it's currently under construction. But hopefully that'll be up and running. But I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not on Instagram. I decided to move away from that platform.
It's good.
But yeah, I'd happily share my email. My door is open. I'm not not trying to hide off.
Dude, amazing. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy now that you own a company.
No, man, I appreciate you having me, and it was nice to it was really good to just catch up and do our thing. I love that you do this. It's so cool.
So that's it for episode 90. Thanks to Ben Morris for coming on the show. If you have any questions about the episode, please drop them in the comments or shoot me a message on socials. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you've been enjoying the show, please consider sharing it with a friend. That is the best way to grow things. Thanks to Stephen Boyd for the audio edit, and I will see y'all next time.